And we are back here on 88.1 WKNC. This is Pulse of the Pack. Your host, Chris Lehman, alongside Ben Hefner and Drew Blevins, as always. Not a bad week for NC State athletics. A good showing from the football team, not quite what we wanted. Everyone wants to see that win against a big, top-ranked team, and just didn't quite work out for the Wolfpack. But it was a good week in general, and I think a good football game. But first, real quick, we're going to go over to Drew because the NC State soccer team is actually getting ready to start. Have they started yet against Syracuse in the ACC tournament?
No, they're about to kick off, so obviously with moments away from kickoff, still 0-0. Big game for NC State in their soccer program, though.
Well, that is actually going to be our prediction this week, so we are going to start with that. We're going to go over last week's predictions. For anyone who isn't familiar with this, we pick one NC State sporting event a week, pick whether the Wolfpack will win or not. That is worth 2 points. There are extra points for the bonus question. Last week it was the winning margin of the NC State-UNC hockey game, and you get either 2 points if you're the closest, 1 point if you're second, or none if you're the farthest away. Last week, everyone gets the 2 because everyone said NC State would beat North Carolina in hockey. That was correct. They win 9-1. So a winning margin of 8. Drew, you said 7. You get the bonus 2. I said 5. I get the extra 1. So finally, we're gaining some ground.
We finally beat him. We finally beat him.
All right. Well, now the standings sit. Ben's still well ahead. 6-point lead. 24 points for Ben. 18 for you, Drew. And I'm back there in last. I'm not used to being there. It was 17 points.
I'm not last year at this point?
Oh, I was Ben last year. Can I have my powers back?
It might have been worse last year. Like, we legitimately had no chance last year.
All right, well, this week, obviously, men's soccer, a win or a loss. Total goals on both sides. I'll remind you, I believe it was a 2-1 win up at Syracuse about 10 to 12 days ago when NC State went up there for their regular season match. So, Ben, we're going to start with you. What do you think the result will be tonight?
Usually I'm very optimistic, but I do not like the way that this soccer team has been trending. I'm going to take a loss, 3 total goals.
True.
You know what? I would have said 3 total goals and a loss, but just to be different, I'm going to keep the 3 total goals. I think NC State flips the script on the Syracuse team. They remember what happened almost 2 weeks ago. I like NC State by a final count of 2-1.
And you say
3 total goals.
I don't believe that's allowed.
Oh,
you can't tie. It would be a tie. You can't tie.
No, I said win for NC State though.
I know, but it's 2 separate entities because it's still
fine. I will go with Alex McCauley gets the shutout. 2-0.
2-0. Okay, so we'll go 2 goals.
2 goals. If we're gonna get that specific about it.
All right, I'm gonna side with Ben on this one. I think this soccer team's kind of faded a little bit. I think Alex McCauley has faded a little bit, which is really a shame because he's been so good for NC State in his time here. I'm going to say a 3-1. NC State down 2-1. They're going to press hard to try to get that tying goal. They're going to end up losing 3-1. So I'm going to say 4 goals on the night tonight. We'll keep up with that, and we'll be able to see maybe who's got the best shot of picking up some points by the end of this show. But first, we want to talk about football, and I think we saw a pretty strong showing from NC State, aside from, I think, an overpowered defense this week. NC State, a good football game. They came out, went hard from the start, like we've been talking about. Sometimes they're slow. They came out of the gate quickly. They got a touchdown on the first drive, and I think it was just offensively a very, very good afternoon, especially considering you go a half really without a running back at all because Matt Days goes down.
Yeah, you can excuse the missed field goal. You can excuse the fumble to an extent. The offense really impressed me, and if we go back, Chris, you said NC State would win if they were to hold them defensively. The reason I said you had to get into a shootout is I predicted that Clemson was going to absolutely outpower this defense, and they did. And it's unfortunate. I didn't think they were going to do it this badly, though. If you had told me State is going to score 6 touchdowns, I would have said ball game right there. I thought the defense could hold Clemson to a touchdown a quarter, maybe 5 if they get one explosive play. And Deshaun Watson absolutely beast mode. 5 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown to boot. Clemson 623 yards of total offense. The defense was absolutely outmatched. There were a couple pivotal plays in that game that we're going to get to momentarily, but overall, NC State has a very good effort. I was impressed with the way they continually executed. It was rare that they were stopped and just stopped outright, and I think in the second half they just ended up giving out of gas, which is to be expected. But I applaud the effort. To an extent, I applaud the result because I think there were a lot of people in the nation that were thinking Clemson was going to walk all over this NC State team, and they didn't. State held their own. They should be proud of their effort, and now you just got to go get one more win, bowl eligibility, and it may come against Boston College this week.
All right, Ben, what were you thinking during that game on Saturday?
Well, this team has absolutely nothing to feel bad about. Like Drew was alluding to, this was a very good Clemson team. College football playoff rankings came out, saying they're the number 1 team in the nation. Now, that's definitely not the end-all, be-all. But
it's certainly a telling factor, though.
It's telling.
Yeah.
And NC State put up a great fight. I love that we got down, 20, 21 points in the second half and still came back to make Clemson worry a little bit. Obviously, the defense was just outmatched. We have not quite arrived as a program to where we need to be yet. They just had the athletes. Deshaun Watson's a Heisman contender, and they have just athletes all over the field. We're just not quite there yet. So proud of the offense. I remember that opening drive, almost didn't understand what was happening because we talked, almost our entire time last week about how good this defensive line was, and we came out running the ball very well. Jacoby looked as good as I've seen him all year, really, because at the beginning of the year we saw him being very conservative, being a game manager because that's all he needed to be, especially with Matt Days being out for potentially a longer period of time. We're going to need to see him step up and really get this passing game going.
I think this was a good offensive game for NC State. Defensively, I know this is a very, very good offense and just a great team overall. There's a reason that they sit at the top of the college football playoff polls right now, and it's because they are that good. But you look at it, and somewhere in there has to at least be a stand. It doesn't even look like there was any resistance. I mean, they give up 16 points one quarter, 10 the next, 21 after that, and then they give up 9, which still ends up being 3 scores in the fourth quarter. So when you look at it, I'm not very happy with the way the defense played. Obviously, if you're getting a score a quarter out of your offense, that's not bad, especially against the third-ranked defense in the country. You come in and put up 41 points. I think that is very, very impressive. There's no reason you can fault the team for that. And this, Drew, is why I said it had to be a low-scoring game. The only chance that NC State has is if their defense plays over their head and finds a way to shut down a Clemson team that maybe has a little bit of an off day. It's just, I think you saw the best effort that you possibly could have out of that offense, and the defense just, they were no match for Clemson's offense. And that's where I want to start, really, is with the defense, because I think there were some real problem areas there. And the thing that I want to look at is kind of what I alluded to, and maybe you guys saw it differently, but to me, especially when you look at the box score and see that it was scoring all the time. There was no resistance. That team just almost just laid down. You have to be, even at your worst, if you're giving an effort, you have to be better than that.
Well, Deshaun Watson had a career day, and I was expecting that because what we have harped on now for 2 months is the secondary is not what we thought it was going to be in the beginning. I did not expect Wayne Gallman to run for 172 yards, a touchdown on 31 carries. What threw me for an absolute loop, and what I think ultimately lost the game for NC State, was second down defense. Yes, Clemson did a very good job when they were passing on first down, picking up chunk yardage. That's going to happen. It's a good Clemson football team. But when there was a stop on first down, it was a simple read option play, outside run, off tackle to Gallman, and he's gashing up for 7 and 8 yards, setting up a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. And this is Clemson. They're going to convert on those type of plays. The only way NC State was able to get their defense off the field was when they made back-to-back defensively solid plays and forced Clemson to a 3rd and 7 or worse. When you're allowing so many rush yards, that's concerning. Because Wayne Gallman is not a Dalvin Cook now. He's not. It's just a fact of the matter. I think he's more comparable to Matt Days when I look at him because, Gallman's not going to be that guy that's going to be running for Heisman like a Fournette, like a Cook. No, he's just an average ACC running back, and you're allowing him to absolutely gash you for chunk yardage consistently, drive after drive, play after play. That's an issue. And we had talked about the front seven was shutting down the run game, that this was a good rush defense. They didn't show up. And I'm not sure if Jared Fernandez, who saw limited snaps because of the injury he sustained against Wake Forest, I'm not sure if that had something to do with it. I'm not sure if there was some sort of inner turmoil going on with the team.
I think part of it had to have been Deshaun Watson. It's just he's that good. But he doesn't have to have the ball.
Is it Watson where you're throwing the linebacking core off with that good of a read option, or is it Gallman's skill? Because I'm sorry, Wayne Gallman wasn't somebody that I thought was going to be the difference. It was all about Deshaun Watson and the receiving core, and it was the running game that ultimately took enough time off the clock for Clemson and ultimately was able to get them first down after first down.
I think the success from that comes from the focus on trying to shut down Deshaun Watson in the passing game. I think you put your energy into that, and then there's nothing left and no focus on Gallman.
Even still, pick an area. It's not just the rush defense. It's the fact that every passing touchdown that Deshaun Watson threw was over 20 yards, that they didn't even have to get in the red zone to be a scoring threat. That's a problem. There was a pass interference called against NC State once again and ended up being declined. I mean, there were so many errors made on defense that it's almost sickening when you look at it, and it's going to be excused because it's the number 3 team in the country and your offense was able to pull you to within 15 points. I mean, let's not forget, this offense, who I'm sure we're going to get to talking about in depth here in a second, this offense had the ball time and time again, was forced to punt very few times. I didn't expect them to score 41 points. I mean, the offense did well. The defense let their offense down. And that's the disappointing thing about it. I think NC State had a real good shot of winning this football game if they were able to take just the field goals off the board. I mean, Greg Hugel was responsible directly for 9 points off of field goals. Not to mention, he had 2 extra points blocked. You take away that special teams play, NC State's right back in this football game and is going to try to steal it at the end, and they almost did. But again, it's Hugel. You're allowing them in scoring range before you stop them. You've got to stop them on the minus side of the 50, and NC State just couldn't do it.
We want to look more at the offensive side here now because I think we can all agree that the defense just wasn't there, and it was really a huge problem for NC State because their offense did put them in a position to have a chance to win. That was the best part of the game to me, to look at those offensive numbers and to have watched that team really stack up against a top-tier defense was very, very encouraging, especially when you play half the game really without a running back. Because Shadrack's gone, he's off the team, and now Matt Days is out maybe for the season, and we'll get more into the implications of that and what possibilities there are in our second segment when we look ahead at this week's game. But it was very, very encouraging because you look at some of the guys that come in and contribute. Jalen Samuels, 1 or 2 rushes usually, still only 6, but most of those coming after Days is hurt, and he goes for about 10 yards a carry. So he fit in there to the way that they ran that offense very well after Days was gone. He's not an impressive runner. He picked up what he was supposed to pick up, but it's an effective runner, and I think that is something that NC State's going to need to utilize a little bit more.
Yeah, I was, and moving forward, we're probably going to need him to kind of move into this new role a little bit. I was pretty excited to see Jalen Samuels running out of the backfield like that. I'm a little bit worried moving forward that maybe we're not going to be able to utilize him in the same ways that we have all year, where he's been so effective. But yeah, the offense I think gets an A+. Clemson, this is definitely the most points that they've allowed. My biggest thing was Jacoby because, like I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen him perform like that all year. And the thing that we had mentioned before is that he looked scared or tentative, and he did get sacked quite a few times. But it didn't seem to shake him and rattle him like it did against Louisville, where all of a sudden he was short-arming everything, putting it into the ground. He was still putting throws on the money, as you could see in the third and fourth quarters where we made our little bit of a comeback. So, yeah, I think the offense is going to be okay. I'm a little bit worried about what's going to happen without Matt Days for the next few weeks at least. But I definitely think that it's a positive. It's another great defense against BC next week, but I definitely think that we can take this week and this experience against one of the better defenses in the nation and dropping 41 points on them and bring that to the rest of the season.
And it wasn't just a couple of players offensively that did well. We haven't mentioned yet David Greenidge, who had a career-high 7 catches in that game as well. It also extended to special teams. Naheem Hines, that was probably my favorite play of the game. 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. He's broken a lot of big returns. He finally breaks one all the way to the house. That was great to see. I think for the rest of the season, for the rest of his career at NC State, he is going to be fun to watch when you put him back there to return punts or kickoffs, because his speed and his agility, his quickness to just be able to move side to side so quickly makes him so dangerous. A.J. Cole, we've been talking about him a lot, continues to get better. You look at what he did this week, 5 punts for an average of 50.6 yards a punt, and that wasn't just one punt that threw off his average. When you look at it, his long was 53. That's 3 yards, actually 2.5 yards more than his average. That means everything was right around 50 yards on 5 punts, not 1 or 2 or 3, 5 punts consistently. Very, very good. It's really good to see that at least most of the special teams right now is making strides forward.
Yeah, I mean, this team is improving, and that's always good to see. I've been impressed with the steps forward that they've made, but I don't want to over-credit this offense either. I still think there's room for improvement, and I think the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, I think the unit coaches, they're going to tell you the same thing. Because at the end of the day, the offense still had an opportunity to capitalize. They were still held to 2 3-and-outs on the day. They still had a fumble that was a little bit dicey at best, only turnover of the game, which was good to see turnovers minimalized. Probably shouldn't have happened. That sets up a Clemson field goal. And keep in mind, Kyle Bambard misses another kick, and Jackson Maples has been taking reps, so I'm predicting we're going to be seeing him kicking as well. I mean, what you're doing in that situation is you're taking points off the board, and I think it's fair to say that because of the production the offense had the rest of the day. The MVP of the offense so far, for me, it's not Matt Days, it's not Jacoby Brissett, it is Jalen Samuels, because he's proven he can do a little bit of everything. He was gashing up the middle for some runs. He is catching the ball well and getting yards after the catch. The Matt Days injury is a little bit concerning because, as Ben so astutely pointed out to me earlier today before we were on the air, he goes, this is a position we were all confident at. This was the deepest position on the entire football team because you had Days, you had Shadrack Thornton, you had Gillespie, you had Nichols, you had Hines. And
it's time to test them.
And now you may be stuck with true freshmen, true running backs, and Jalen Samuels, who's this sort of flex player in the backfield. That's concerning, especially when you're going up against Boston College, who Dave Doran has not beaten in his coaching career. That's a little red flag for me. I think NC State might be all right, but we're going to get to that in the next segment. This offense is impressive. I think after the coughing ups against Louisville and against Virginia Tech, they have improved to a point that this is now acceptable football coming out of this NC State offensive side of the ball. It's going to be exciting to see what they do the rest of the year.
All right, well, very quickly before we finish up here on our first segment, we have to do What's the Word? The question this week, one word or something, one thing that NC State can take away from this Clemson loss against a very good team in a game that you played well and apply and translate into this week's game. Ben, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm just going to go for like what we can do moving forward. I'm going to look at our defense, say regroup. You face what might be at least a top 3 in the nation as far as talent goes, offense. You're going up against BC next, which is almost the exact opposite of a Clemson offense. So I think we need to just shake this one off and try to get some people healthy over the week and moving forward, get our defense together because there's no reason that our offense should put up 41 points and still have a loss.
I'm going to go with determination. And the reason I say that is because this team has made plays and you've seen sparks of greatness, but there's something lacking. And when you play a big game, a game that you know you're not supposed to win, a rivalry game at that, it's going to be about who wants it more. That's something in my athletic career that was taught to me. Interesting statistic. NC State has forced 15 fumbles this year, and you will not hear this anywhere else. Nobody else talking about this because they've only recovered three out of those 15 forced fumbles. That's the willpower that you need. That's the determination, the grit, the toughness to get down there and scrap for that football and create your own turnovers. Once State starts doing that, the sky's the limit for this football team. Because once they start recovering, once they start creating those turnovers, then they're getting the ball back in the offense's hands that scored 41 points against one of the best defenses in the nation. I'm excited to see what this team is going to do moving forward, but now they've got to get a little bit tougher. They've got to be more determined to finish the plays that they're making.
All right. The word that I'm going to go with is confidence, and you have to take this two different ways, offensively and defensively. Offensively, you have to realize that you could not have done anything better. That was as good of a performance as this team offensively has put on all season. Keep that confidence up and translate it into this week against a defense that's still good, but one that is not nearly as good as Clemson. On the defensive side, you have to forget this game. You have to get back that confidence that you had against the Troys and Eastern Kentuckys, the South Alabamas, those non-conference games that you were dominating in, and play like that. Because even if the team is better, if you play like that, you can still shut them down. And that's what we're going to get into when we come back. That'll be our topic of conversation. NC State, Boston College up in Chestnut Hill. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more NC State football here on Pulse of the Pack on 88.1 WKNC. We are back again here on Pulse of the Pack, 88.1 WKNC. We're up in the studio in Witherspoon Student Center here on the campus of NC State University. Been talking NC State football. Chris Lehman, Drew Blevins, and Ben Hefner here with you. We just finished up our conversation about Clemson and NC State last week on Halloween. Good effort from the Pack, at least offensively, but they fall short 56-41. Now another tough opponent coming up. Very quickly, though, before we get back into football, we're going to go over to Drew. Anyone who was listening earlier knows NC State playing their first ACC tournament game as men's soccer up in Syracuse. What do we have going on right now?
Well, the Orange were out to a very quick start, scoring in the 10th minute. They lead NC State by a count of 1-0. The Wolfpack has just taken another foul, just a little bit over halfway through the first half in that one. Syracuse up on the Pack, 1-0.
All right, well, we'll have to keep that one posted. Not quite right with the shutout there, but there's still the chance that they win the game. Still a chance that they come away with the win. And I will say this right now. If it's a 1-1 tie to PKs and NC State wins, it's still 2 goals. It is still 2 goals. The penalty kicks will not count towards the goals.
Okay, whatever you say.
I will give you that benefit of the doubt.
How
you
many
still
points
can get
would
that
I have
right.
gotten if I had said it's going to be 1-1, go to penalty kicks, 5-4 State and PKs?
That might have just ended everything. That would have been incredible. But we're going to get back now to football. We digress. NC State playing Boston College at Boston College this week. That's a very good defensive team like Clemson, but I don't think it's going to be as challenging for NC State defensively because we talked about weaknesses in the secondary, and that's where I want to start is this offense-defense matchup because I think it's very favorable to NC State. You look at it, there's not much when it comes to throwing the ball for Boston College. It's almost all on the ground. I think that is huge for NC State. 108.5 yards passing a game is absolutely nothing. I mean, I think that is very favorable to NC State.
Without a doubt, it is incredibly favorable to NC State. I mean, I'm looking on their website right now. 1,500 yards rushing on the season. 583 pass yards. That is atrocious. That may be the bottom of the ACC with the exception of possibly Wake Forest or Syracuse. I'd have to do more research on that. But the fact of the matter is, this goes back to what Ben said is his word, regroup. If this rush defense reassesses, understands the fact that the ball is coming to you, the front 7 has to have a big game. This is your Rose and your Roseboro and your Street. Those are the guys that are going to need to step up and make the tackles and make them early and not allow anything to get up and into the linebacker and safety core. Because if you're able to stop the running game, this is such a one-dimensional Eagles football team that you're going to win the game as long as your offense produces at a moderate level. Also, I think the bigger thing is stop them on the first 2 downs. Make sure you're getting Boston College to 3rd and long situations because on the season, the Eagles are only converting 29.46% of the time on 3rd downs. The other mark is that's actually a good statistic for them because on defense, they are holding their opponents to converting on 3rd down only 23% of the time. So NC State's going to have their offense show up, but if the defense is able to stop the running game, I think that's going to be the biggest key.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the offense. What you see is what you get pretty much with Boston College. They're going to run the ball hard, not going to pass it very much, probably not a whole lot of explosive plays, but I'm also not going to write this team off because if our offense doesn't come to play, I'm looking at their record right now. In their games against Louisville and Virginia Tech, very similar scores to what we had. They lost to Louisville 14-17. They lost to Virginia Tech 10-26. Very similar to the scores that we had. But then, of course, they also lost to Wake Forest 3-0. So, a lot of it is based on how NC State comes out and plays, especially our offense, because if we can get, 20 points up, say, in the first half, it might be over. So I'm interested to see how we play, but there are definitely never any definites in NC State athletics. So, Boston College put up like 17 on Clemson. So I do think that we're going to need to score some points. I don't think it's going to be like the Wake Forest game where there's going to be shut out. It is at Boston College and NC State. I think we only have one win ever against Boston College. So I definitely think that we have something to prove. It would be great if we go ahead and get that 6th win out of the way so we don't have that looming over our heads moving forward into some tougher competition.
And the thing that I want to look at here is the defense for Boston College. That poses the biggest challenge because, as both of you said, in one way or another, if NC State scores, it's over because Boston College their offense isn't there. You look at defensively, they give up 13 1/3 points per game, and they're 3-6. They haven't won a conference game. There clearly is no offense if they can't win games and their defense is holding teams to 2 touchdowns really a game. That's just absurd. You'd think you'd be getting better results. So the defense is really where the question is, and my question is how easy or hard is it going to be for NC State to score against this defense? I mean, they held Clemson and Florida State, probably arguably the 2 best teams in the ACC, and at least in my mind, definitely the 2 best teams, to a combined 24 points a game. That's not too shabby because you look at NC State gives up 50-plus points to both teams the last 2 times that they played each of them at home. This is a very good defense. How much or how big of a problem do you think they're going to be for NC State's offense?
I think it's definitely going to be a problem. The loss of Matt Days is a big one because we're going to have to not only establish the run, but kind of establish who's going to run and how we're going to run. And doing that against a great defense like Boston College is not going to be easy, especially on the road. It's going to be a little chillier. So we're going to, like I was mentioning earlier, we're going to have to look at Jacoby to have a good game. Hopefully we can get some big plays going. I don't know how many sustained drives we're going to be able to have, but we saw against Clemson, this team definitely has big playability. We didn't see a lot of it in the earlier part of the season, but against Wake Forest, against Clemson, we started to see some of those big plays. I think this team this unit at least, has a lot of confidence coming out of that Clemson game. So I think we're going to be able to put up enough points to get the W as long as the defense doesn't completely fail and let Boston College go over 20 or something.
Well, I want to look at the players that NC State's going to be missing against Boston College because you talked about that could be a problem. And I don't know if you guys know, but Matt Days is not the only starter that is not going to be playing in this game. Will Richardson got in a little bit of trouble this weekend. He has been suspended by the team for this game. Starting right tackle, the way that this Boston College team plays, that's not good because this is a gritty team, both offensively and defensively. Smash mouth, hard-hitting football, which means that in the trenches, they're not an easy team to deal with. Losing a starting lineman along with your starting running back could be very destructive, Drew.
If I'm Steve Adazio, I'm blitzing to Will Richardson's spot all day long because he's not going to be there. And this is the thing that struck me. This is a true freshman offensive lineman replaced by another true freshman offensive lineman who has seen exactly 0 snaps all game long, all season long. That is bothersome. I am blitzing to that side as hard as I possibly can because here's the catch. When I look at these defensive statistics for Boston College, they've allowed 12 touchdowns all season. They almost were the team that upset Florida State at home on September 12th, I believe it was. Thursday night game. 18.
They beat Howard
this was
76-0.
well, the Florida State game was their red bandana game. If they get a good crowd atmosphere, there's no telling what this team could do. This is dangerous. If I look at the red zone statistics, 11 touchdowns for opponents on 15 opportunities. 4 touchdowns on 15 opportunities, 11 scores. So there's 4 times where opponents have gotten in the red zone and come away with absolutely nothing. It's bothersome because I don't know what NC State's special teams game is going to be like. This could be another low-scoring battle that may come down to a field goal. And when you've got a quote-unquote starting kicker who is 3 for 9, that's always worrisome. That's dicey. This could be a big problem. Now, that being said, I think that you can really try to minimize the impact of what may be a weak running game because of Days and because of Richardson if you get Jacoby Brissett the ball and start throwing some slants and throwing the ball to David Greenidge and picking up a couple of chunk yardage, doing this NFL sort of check down play. That doesn't bother me. I think that may just get the job done against Boston College because they haven't seen and have not had success against a lot of pass-heavy teams. So I look at that, and I think that may favor NC State. But even at that, the offensive line still allowed Jacoby Brissett to be sacked 4 times against Clemson. So there's certainly some tightening up that needs to be done, or else NC State may be in a little bit of trouble. I still got the pack in this one. I think they get it done and get their bowl eligibility here, but it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, and that's the thing I almost see as a silver lining, and I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if NC State turned into a better offensive team. As strange as it sounds, I could see them becoming a better offensive team without Matt Days. Look at the way that they played offense against Clemson in the second half. And the telltale sign for me, look at the average per attempt for Jacoby Brissett, 6 yards per attempt. That means to me that more of these passes are short, more of these passes are going for shorter yardage. They're out of his hand quickly, and that, I think, could work very well for this team right now. And I think that's what you were talking about, is without a running game, you have to find a way to almost turn it into a hybrid where you get the ball out of Jacoby's hands quickly, get it to someone in space who can move with it, and then I think they're going to find a rhythm. I think that could work.
Jalen Samuels may be really, really big in this football game, sort of that flex player. I would like to make an amendation to the statement I made earlier. Will Richardson redshirted in his freshman year, so he's not a true freshman. So,
still short on
not to
experience,
appear a fool,
but
I
yes.
would like to make that correction.
Ben, I want to see what your thoughts are here on the injuries and suspension that NC State has to deal with offensively. How much of a problem could that be against a pretty good Boston College defense?
Well, yeah, as good as our running backs were at the start of the season, they were also the position that we had the most depth at. So it's about to be tested, and some guys like Reggie Gillespie are going to have to step up a lot. Nyheim Hines might even get a few carries out of the backfield, which probably, is more of what he did in high school, but we haven't seen him do that at the college level yet. Will Richardson, that is going to be tough, replacing him. We still don't know how long that suspension is going to be, could possibly be out for the season based on some precedents that NC State has set in the past with athletes that get DUIs. In replacing him, we've had a few injuries earlier in the year on the line, so we have a few guys that we could shuffle in there, but it is definitely a big-time loss going up against a hard defense like Boston College. I agree with Drew. I think State's going to figure out a way to win this one, if not for our own talents, but Boston College's overall lack of offensive talent. Hopefully, the defense can help out our offense a little bit and get some turnovers as well as holding Boston College, because some short field's definitely going to help this offense out.
And there's one more thing as we get close to our second break here that I want to talk about briefly, and that is bowl eligibility. Because, Drew, you brought that up, and that is something that is very important when you look at this NC State team right now. You're down to you're almost done. You're running out of time here at this point. And you're running out of games that you can win. This is one of them. Boston College is one that NC State should win. Florida State, if they do, it's a bonus. But I think everyone, since the time that this matchup was set, was saying Florida State's going to win that game. Then you have Syracuse. That's your other really winnable game that you should win. North Carolina, that's a wild card because it's a rivalry game. But it's not one that I would, at least right now, necessarily expect NC State to win. And some of that hinges on whether or not Matt Days is back. So how important is this game? Because it is one of those kind of last chance games to ensure your postseason lives.
I mean, Chris, don't get me wrong. The football team's thinking the exact same thing because they're looking at the remaining schedule and they're going, yeah, if I had to pick a game to win, it's going to be this one. I mean, there's no time like the present, first of all. I picked this team to go 9-3, lost to Virginia Tech, Clemson, Florida State. At best, I see this team being able to go 7-5. There's no way this team beats Florida State because of either who they're missing or because of internal struggle and the fact this game is in Tallahassee. I would be absolutely shocked if this team pulls that upset, especially considering FSU already dropped a game this season to Georgia Tech on the road. North Carolina, yes, it's a rivalry game. North Carolina is ranked. And I think that it's going to be very easy to overpsych yourself out for that football game because I firmly believe that that team is probably going to be the one to represent the Coastal Division when it comes ACC championship game time. I think they beat Duke this week. I know that game's in Durham, and I think that their last line to get through is going to be NC State to prevent that second ACC loss, and that's assuming they don't have a hiccup along the way as they come to Raleigh. I mean, that's a good football team. This is the game you have to win. Syracuse has shown flickers and glimmers of, that might not be as bad of a football team as everybody says. I think this is the week that you have to get it done, and I think if they do, that provides a whole lot more added confidence in the remaining 3 games because then a whole lot of pressure gets off. Because this is the other thing I know. If you don't win this game and if you don't beat Florida State, you can really get overpsyched out because of that Syracuse game coming up, and if you lose to the Orange, then you know it really is do or die against a very good North Carolina football club.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone here in saying that it would just
You've been a Duke football fan your whole life.
It would just be a tragedy if Carolina's ACC championship hopes hinged on a trip to Raleigh and they lost. That would just be terrible for...
I wouldn't mind that one bit. I would not mind it at all.
For us here at NC State, I agree. We really need to win this one. Otherwise... Carolina game is going to be real tricky. FSU on the road is difficult. Syracuse, we should win that, but again, like Drew said, you don't want that pressure going into that game. So, no time like the present. Let's get it done this weekend.
I think we all agree this is the one to win, and I'm gonna kind of build off of what you were talking about. Is that pressure kind of goes away when you get that win, and it's like, all right. Now it's just, let's try and make this a better bowl game kind of thing. But it's just, it sits there in the back of your mind. And the word that I used earlier after the Clemson game to bring on for the rest of the season is confidence. That confidence starts to go away if you can't get that win. It starts to fade. And if it happens this week where NC State loses, that confidence drops. Then they have to come up against Florida State, who could very likely beat them by 3 or 4 scores. That's going to kill some confidence as well, and it's just all downhill from there. It has to happen this week, I think, or I could really see NC State losing the rest of these football games.
That's right. That's what I'm worried about. You don't win now, you lose out. No bowl. Sorry.
All right, well, that will do it for our football discussion tonight, but still some Olympic sports to talk about when we return here on Pulse of the Pack, so keep it right here. Welcome back here on 88.1 WKNC. This is Pulse of the Pack. Chris Lehman, Ben Hefner, and Drew Blevins here with you as we continue to talk about NC State athletics. We're done with football now. A 56-41 loss to the Clemson Tigers this past week, and a tough one coming up against the Boston College Eagles that really could be the difference in a postseason berth for NC State, despite having 3 games after that to try and get that win that they need. But we do have a team right now that is playing in the postseason. That's who we're going to talk about. The men's soccer team right now, ACC tournament, first game against Syracuse in Syracuse. Drew, you've been keeping us posted. Last we checked, it was 1-0 Syracuse. Where are we now?
Same score, and we're about 30 seconds away from halftime right now. NC State has really tightened up the strings on defense. I'm expecting the offense to come in the last 45 minutes. We shall see.
All right, well, that is what we want to talk about, and we'll start with the game that NC State had before Syracuse, or rather the game that was sandwiched in between 2 Syracuse games, because a couple of weeks ago, October 23rd, NC State went up to New York, lost 2-1 to the Orange. They had their senior night last home game on Friday, October 30th, this past week. Not a very good showing from the Wolfpack. One of the worst of the season. Of course, you're up against one of the best teams in the country. I mean, the football team was ranked to number 3. They've jumped to number 1. Clemson was ranked number 3 in soccer. They've jumped to number 2. in the country behind Wake Forest. So not a bad week for Clemson. I guess they like playing us. I'm sure they would love to return, but that was really, for me, the big thing is the 4 goals. Losing to a top 5 team in the country, there's no shame in that. It's the fact that they give up 3 first-half goals, 4 goals before they finally get their only goal of the game, and it just did not seem like a good defensive showing.
No, it's really inexplicable. I mean, it's tough because this team was the team that was being competitive with higher-ranked opponents. This was the team that knocked off number 14 South Carolina. I mean, this was an impressive soccer team that I thought could end up doing something, and then it's just been sort of limped to the finish line. I picked Clemson to win this game. I'm okay admitting that. I did not expect Clemson to win 4-1. I expected this one to be nitty-gritty, tough guy soccer, and it just wasn't. The Tigers came out and manhandled the Wolfpack. I was glad that Philip Carmen was able to break the shutout for Clemson and at least salvage some bit of pride, but at the end of the day, Clemson is clearly a better team, and they proved it in Raleigh.
Well, yeah, all year this team has been predicated, or our success has been predicated on a tight defense. Just seems like recently, like in the Duke game, yeah, we got a red card, but it seems like they get 1 goal, they get 2 goals, and all of a sudden it's just, and they got 3 right in a row against Clemson. And, you know, this offense is sporadic at times. It can be dynamic. You definitely have some guys like Knudsen in there that can go grab a goal, but we're not a team that's going to score 3-4 goals a game generally. So, you know, when you start giving up that many goals, it's not good for this team. And, you know, unless they can start getting back to that midseason form where our defense is at least keeping us in games so that we can fight for it in the last 15 minutes, I just do not see this team going much farther.
Yeah, it's not even that this team has done a poor job too much defensively in that game. You look at it, they held Clemson to 9 shots. Problem is, over half of them, 5 of them were on goal. And that's just too many big mental breakdowns.
Well, that's Clemson scoring at 80% on shots on frame, and that is really rough.
But then you look at the other side, too, at NC State, and they take 16 shots. They only put 6 of them on net. And to me, you look at that, and that's your telltale sign right there. Clemson didn't take a lot of shots, but they found the spots that were open, and they took good quality shots. NC State, they were just kind of, there's the net, let's throw it on. And that may have been partially a result of being down by a lot late, but you got to find a way to make those higher quality chances because even right now, you're down to 45 minutes, and I wouldn't say NC State sits 27th in the RPI polls on NCAA.com. They still need to kind of reassure themselves that they have a chance or are going to be in the NCAA tournament.
I think they win this game, they're going to be fine. It's not going to be a pretty seeding by any stretch of the means. It's not going to be a team that's going to win the national championship. But if I am the tournament committee and I'm looking at putting NC State in and I'm looking at the way they've lost these past few games, and even it was a close win against Appalachian State, a team that they probably should have ended up beating fairly soundly, this is a little bit concerning. Now, I will always defend putting shots toward the net. I will always defend that because I find that to be a great brand of soccer. I find that to be an entertaining brand of soccer, and we've talked about it all year. Yes, you would love to see more shots on frame, but when you're creating those offensive opportunities to even have a chance to get the shot off, when you're a team like NC State playing a better school like Clemson is, like Wake Forest is, like North Carolina is, the only way that you're going to get scoring opportunities is to create them yourselves. I'm okay if you're taking 16 pops at the net. Yeah, I think you need to be looking somewhere between 50 and 60% getting on net realistically. It's going to be a whole lot better if you're able to get 3/4, but, I mean, we're talking soccer here. You have a 78% chance once you strike that ball that it's going to miss frame. This team will improve. I have firm confidence in that because they're not going to lose a ton of players. The biggest thing they're going to lose is back on defense and the goalkeeper, Alex McCauley. I'm okay with this. I think this is a new branding of NC State soccer. This is the direction the program is going to go in, and I find it to be highly entertaining. I applaud the direction this program is going in.
All right, we'll have to see where NC State ends up. I'm assuming at this point it is halftime, 1-0, correct, Drew?
That would be correct.
All right, 1-0 score at halftime. That will probably be the last update we have as we get down here towards the end of our show. Couple of more sports to talk about. Women's soccer finished their season on Sunday afternoon at number 22 Duke. tough loss there for the Lady Pack. They lose 5-0. What's going to be the off-season focus for this team? They finish up their season 4-15, 0-10 in conference. What do you have to look for to build going into the next season?
I think you got to start playing tough girl soccer. I really do, because the 4 out-of-conference wins, that's great. You double your win total from last year. I think that's phenomenal. That's certainly a step in the right direction. But you've got to find some sort of grit, toughness, and determination to be able to get a win in conference. Because if you're not doing that, there's no chance you're going to advance to the postseason. I think this program needs to start looking at getting some sort of fire in the belly, some sort of determination to start scoring more goals, to not get blown out by teams that are in the lower portion of the rankings. And at the end of the day, yeah, NC State has never been exactly a leader in soccer, men's or women's, but they've always been competitive and they've always played with pride. And it's really tough to do that when you go 0-10 in conference on the season. I think you just need to start to bolster it up, play with a little bit more iron, get stronger, get tougher, and then look at competition.
For me, it's going to be working on the defense. We've seen it with the men's team a little bit. I still think that this team's, 2, 3, 4 years away from getting the talent together to really compete in the ACC. But if you improve the defense, you can keep yourself in games. The score lines get a little bit smaller. You can get a little bit more confidence around the program. And who knows? If you, just like the guys' team, if you leave it to the very end to where you're still in it, we definitely have some talent up top. That's starting to get a little bit older. I think that they can eventually start getting some goals, but I definitely think the defense needs to be upgraded, because we're not going to win a game where we give up 5-6 goals.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see until next year where they end up. We have one more sport here as we run down our list to talk about. That would be women's volleyball. A 1-1 week, they pick up their third ACC win on Friday, a home win in Carmichael Gymnasium, 3-2 against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Then on Sunday, they are swept by number 23 Louisville, but a very good sign when you look at the freshman player of the week for the ACC. It was Becky Porter from NC State. 42 assists, 6 digs, and 2 blocks against Notre Dame on Friday. 31 assists and 9 digs against Louisville on Sunday. Spectacular weekend for the freshman, but she's not the first one to do it. Blake Renica did it back on September 21st that week. So there is some good production coming out of some of these freshmen. Ben, I'm going to start with you. What does this mean for this team? Obviously, with a 3-9 in-conference record, you want to see that improve, but it certainly looks like the young talent is starting to develop.
Yeah, starting to compete a little bit, starting to get some wins. That's always great for a very young program. At the moment, we have a lot of freshmen, obviously, and freshmen that are playing at a high level. So that's very exciting for this team moving forward. Again, this team, as far as like postseason aspirations, is pretty much done. But it'd be nice to see if we can get a few more wins, make sure that we stay over 500 for our overall record.
I mean, I love the fact that she's not winning the ACC Freshman of the Week for her kills. She's not getting the scoring points. She's playing the secondary role and allowing her bigs to make those plays. 42 assists, 31 assists against a number 23 team, by the way. That's impressive. This is a hustler. She's scoring on the digs as well. She's keeping the ball alive. That's what you want from a young team right now, the fact that they're able to keep the play going, to keep the volleys up, and then allow their scorers to do their job eventually. I mean, when you look at playing a majority of the lower half of the ACC, if you're keeping the ball alive, you're giving your team an opportunity to win the volleyball match. I think this team's moving in the right direction. I love the way Becky Porter plays. I think she's a real hustler. We'll see. I think next year, the year after, this could be a dangerous team.
Well, couple of more winnable games coming up this week for the Wolfpack. It's a road trip that will go up to Boston College on Friday, right before the football team is up there playing on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they will be in Syracuse, following the footsteps of the men's soccer team, hopefully both coming away with wins in New York. We'll have to wait and see, though. That is all we're going to have for you tonight, but of course, before we leave, as all of you know, we have to get to our shout-outs. So going through shout-outs now, Ben, we're going to start with you. Who do you have?
You know what? I'm going to throw it back to who we were just talking about. I'm going to give my shout-out to the volleyball team. I've probably been their harshest critic over the past year because of what they did to me last year. So I'm really happy to see this team starting to get a few wins in the ACC. starting to get more competitive with a few of the better teams. Yeah, so I'm just really proud of this team for not giving up, because it's a very easy thing to do. We've seen it a little bit with the women's soccer team, 2 straight years of not winning in the ACC. Near the end of the year, they start going downhill a little bit, but you haven't seen it from the volleyball team, so very proud of their effort at the latter part of the season.
Couple shout-outs for me. A quick shout-out of encouragement down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Best of luck against the Louisiana State Tigers. The Bayou Bengals come to town in a game that could be for the SEC West Championship.
Go Tigers.
Roll Tide, roll. Sticking with NC State, though, this is an Olympic sport that we rarely get to talk about because there's not a whole lot to talk about until now. The NC State track and field team, both men and women, break the USTFCCA top 10 rankings. That is tremendous. The women are ranked number 8. The men are ranked number 10. This is a sport that doesn't get a whole lot of looking at, but this NC State track and field team is looking really solid. Fast runners, great field athletes. I'm excited for these guys. They are in action on Saturday at the Cary Soccer Park for the Three-Stripe Invite.
All right, my shout-out is going to go to the seniors of the women's soccer team who finished up their NC State careers on Sunday. Just want to say thank you for 4 years of hard work here at NC State and giving us your all out there on the soccer pitch. I want to let you know we all appreciate it. I have one other shout-out as well to the NC State hockey team, a 9-1 drubbing of the UNC Tar Heels. Everyone at NC State loves to see the Wolfpack beat the Tar Heels. They do it last week. 2 more games coming up this week down in Wilmington against the Seahawks on Friday. That can be found here on 88.1 WKNC. Puck drop at 10 p.m., so a late start there. Speaking of Wolfpack Sports Television, though, I want to let you guys know that we've actually had a camera in the studio tonight filming. If there's anything you wanted to listen to again, feel free to go to the Wolfpack Sports Television YouTube or Vimeo page, and you can check out our show there. And if you want, get a look at the faces behind the voices. Well, that will do it for us tonight. I want to thank everyone for listening. Don't forget us next week. We'll be back here on 88.1 WKNC with Pulse of the Pack at 7 p.m. next week on Wednesday.